Hello, everyone. Welcome to ScoutCenter. I'm Charles Meade, Director of Marketing and Public Relations for the Capital Area Council of the Boy Scouts here in Austin. What happens when a Scout leader lets their youth protection training expire? In our council, that answer is changing. And that's why we wanted to visit today with Christy Cochran, our council's training committee chair. Christy, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So, Christy, the National Scouting America policy for years has been to require adult members to retake youth protection training every 2 years. But if you didn't, you'd get emails from the National Council reminding you to take the training. And if you didn't, you couldn't do things like attend an overnight camp or other scouting activities. Now, in June, our council's executive board decided to go a step further to maintain the safety of the youth in our program. I'd like you to describe for us the action that our board has taken.
Okay. Well, first, our council decided that the scout safety is our number one priority. And moving forward, um, we're wanting to make sure that the programs we're offering our youth are safe and they can grow and learn without any kind of impact to their ability to stay safe and to have fun. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything in our ability to give them that space for that. So this includes having every adult that interacts with our youth know and understand the barriers to abuse, which is provided in our youth protection training right now. So with that in mind, the board unanimously decided and voted to suspend any adult registered with Scouts who has an expired YPT. So basically, if your YPT lapses, you will have a suspension put on your account until you get it taken care of.
And so the idea there is we're still working some of the finite details, but in essence, your unit key 3 will get the message that lets them know that this den leader or this assistant scoutmaster or this member of the unit committee has their training expired, and as a result, until that gets taken care of, they can no longer be involved in scouting activities. So leaders, that is something that you need to be aware of and needs to be important that we continue to reinforce the importance of making sure that everybody keeps their youth protection training up to date. So, Christy, in the past, both our national and our local council would work to remind volunteers to get their training done. We talked a little bit about that in that first part. But this is a little more of a proactive policy. Why the change now?
So National sends out emails at 90 days, 60 days, 30 days, and 2 weeks before YPT is expired. And unfortunately, I refer to the human factor where we let emails slip past us. We see it, we know it's there, but we're not dealing with it right now. We'll get to it when I have time. And life happens. And so I've been in that spot myself. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I got to get my YPT finished. So the more proactive policy almost gives us incentive to stay updated with our YPT training. And not only incentive to get it done, but it just reinforces the fact that we want a safe space for our youth. And so the good news though is once you've completed your YPT, if you've been suspended, let's say you're suspended at the end of June because you have an expired YPT, but you take it first week in July, you will be reinstated. There's no cost or fee. There's no reapplication. It's just, okay, you're up to date now and you'll be able to be active in the program again. Scouting America is the safest program or safest youth program in America. And our goal nationally, as well as within our council, is to make sure it stays that way.
And just absolutely critical, if you're listening, to get that main message that we really, really want everybody to prioritize that youth protection training and making sure that you're staying up to date because that information makes a difference. Christy, most of the adults in scouting, I know you're in this boat, myself, the same, you've taken the youth protection training several times. And some folks may be wondering, well, okay, so why is there a need to take the same training over and over? Uh, there is an important reasoning behind that. And talk to us about what the message that you want volunteers to understand about the training, as well as the value of hearing this information multiple times.
So when we hear things over and over again, it tends to stick with us longer and better, and we apply what we've learned on a more regular basis and with consistency, which is really important. Um, National updates their YPT program, their training information, and sometimes it's really subtle information, or they clarified something that was fuzzy before, and it's something that we have an obligation to our youth to do, is to take this training every 2 years. But keeping up with our YPT, our youth protection training, we're guaranteeing that every single adult that is working with our youth are working from the same bit of understanding of information. We all heard it, we all see it, we all know it, and we are all working together to make sure it's implemented in our units and whenever we're around scouts. And sometimes it rolls into other parts of your life as well. But it helps us to work together, to hold each other accountable, and to really make sure that those barriers to abuse are in place. And that again comes back to it over and over again. Why wouldn't we do something if it makes sure our kids are safe?
Yeah, and I think that's an important comment there, because if you, God forbid, be in a position where you're having to step in and prevent a youth safety infraction from happening, or you see the potential for one, that's a high stress environment. And that information may not be quite as readily accessible as you think it is. So the more times you've taken it, the more likely it is that that will be top of mind. You'll be able to react in a way that helps keep our scouts safe. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah. So my next question is, we're kind of looking at what the national organization wants to do, and this action that our board has taken. It comes as Glenn Pounder, who I believe you mentioned earlier, he's Scouting America's National Youth Protection Lead. He recently told Scout executives, so the leader of every local council, at least professionally, that adult leaders were going to be required to take youth protection training every year instead of what it's been before, which is every 2 years. And we believe that this effect, or this change rather, is going to take effect in 2025. So, from your seat as the training chair, what's your reaction to this change?
So currently our when we go out and have conversations with people with roundtables and whatnot, we currently we strongly recommend that everyone takes YPT annually. Find an anniversary date when you change your batteries, a birthday, something, and take the training again, just to stay abreast of all the changes that have happened or updates that they've made to YPT. And so that's what we already currently recommend. So with that said, as you mentioned, Glenn Pounder, our chief safeguarding officer, mentioned that Scouting America will be updating the current youth protection training, hopefully around October or sometime this fall before the end of the year. And in his conversation, he talks about the new rollouts, including more pragmatic look at things. When you have a 17-year-old on the middle of a camp out all of a sudden turning 18, does that mean we have to pick them up and move them over to the adult section, or can they finish the next day out? That's an example he's given to us. So just being pragmatic about the realities of what's happening in our units. And he wants it to be much more relevant with all the research that he's done this past year, and to really have a complete focus on the prevention of abuse instead of focusing on what is abuse, is how do we prevent it. And it's pretty exciting hearing him talk, and with his background in working with agencies that help, with children who've been exploited or in situations that are not at all positive. So the upcoming changes also include an enhancement dealing with peer-on-peer incidents. Unfortunately, we have more peer-peer, youth-on-youth incidences than we have adults. And Glenn Pounder says, as long as we have human involvement, there's going to be it's hard to come down to zero incidents at all. And so that's why we have to stay vigilant. Um, the new course, what he has said, well, they're aiming for a minimum of 60 minutes because National is based out of Texas. Texas has a state law about 60-minute training videos for camps, etc. And Pounder's goal is to have a shorter 20-minute YPT update every following year. And so if we can invest that time up front, make sure we're really good with the information with those barriers to abuse and helping prevent it. Every year we'll just have some updates, some tweaks, things and information that's coming out of National to stay current. And again, it just keeps coming back to the safety of our youth. Why wouldn't we choose not to do these trainings or hold off or ignore them when it's one of the best ways to keep our kids safe and having the knowledge and knowing what those barriers are to keep things from happening. So it's I hear it over and over. It's too long. Can't they just do updates? Well, National's listening and they're hearing what we have to say, and they're coming back at us with a shorter video up front with small snippets every year to keep us updated.
Yeah, that's a key point that you mentioned in there. That math is easy to do when we all do the things that we're supposed to do, following that national policy, keeping our training updated. Kids stay safe, and that's obviously what we all want to have happen. Uh, the scouting program in general, it's been
Mhm.
working for, frankly, more than 40 years to make the program safer. And certainly, youth protection training, key part of all of that effort. Uh, Now, the training, as we've talked about a little bit, has been updated several times. And as you mentioned briefly there, it's about to undergo some important new changes on top of that. Share a little more about what you know about that, and especially how the information that is changing about child safety and how that in the training, the implementation is evolving.
All right. So it was really exciting to get to listen to Glenn Pounder at a webinar a few weeks or a month or so back, and he's hoping to have a new one or another one coming up in the fall. But he reiterated that the goal of Scouting America is to prepare Americans' youth for lives of impact and purpose. And within that, they have a goal that they want Scouting America to be the leader in safeguarding youth, right? So some of the changes or additions he talked about that we'll see in the near future, and by no means this is all of them, but these are ones that stood out, is that there'll be updates to a more relevant and practical youth protection training, including time and investment in curriculum and training that's built on these updates, but also really beefing up this youth on youth protection, peer on peer stuff again, because those are the highest number of incidents we're seeing right now. He also wants to work in an age appropriate way and empower the youth to become leaders in safety, much like the rest of the much like they are leaders in the rest of the scouting programs. So I found this fascinating, not fascinating, it really resonated with me, is that he wants to take the fear away from the youth and put it back on the criminal. And by doing that, we need to empower our youth to stand up, to recognize, to be able to minimize the barriers, again, put up those barriers and minimize anything happening to them. So I'm really intrigued on seeing how that age appropriate changes to the curriculum will come about. The focus is also on the prevention of incidents. Recognize it before things happen, go into an area being safe. We do a lot of that in scouting in other ways as well. Um, there is Project iGuardian, which is the educational arm of the No to Protect campaign that Glenn Pounder is working with. And the idea is to teach the public about the ongoing threats and children and teens face from online predators. And so really, kind of spreading the scope of it a little bit wider as well. Um, he also mentioned improving and strengthening reporting. So they have a new and improved app that they're working on right now that will be available to every volunteer, which would include their picture, copy of the YPT certification dates, an easier way of reporting any incident that comes around, and just improve across the board all aspects of scouting. And so I know we're always like, oh, not another app, but this one sounds like it's going to be an all-in-one versus several different ones. So I'm very excited to see what that turns out to be. The other thing that he mentioned is focus on communication. Um, Communication is going to be absolutely crucial to safeguarding our youth. And he also, with that, says we need to work with our with and through parents, and never be a barrier between the parents and their youth. And so finding a way to really connect them more into what's going on. The way he kind of said is, in Cub Scouting, the parents is there. Kayla, they're always right there. But in Scouts, when they transfer up, all of a sudden, parents, thank you for you being there, but we got this. And so there's been some stigmas with parents all of a sudden being left out. And how do we bring them back into that conversation, back into helping be a part of the greater network and making sure that we're doing everything we can to safeguard our youth. So a lot of great changes. I'm so excited about what Glenn Pounder is bringing to the table. And I know there's more information up on the national website about what's going on, but it's I'm looking forward to seeing these changes and these updates happen to the overall safety of our youth programs.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you're describing is really this concept of reinforcing and growing this culture of
Yes.
safety. And culture gets overused nowadays, but I think in scouting's sense, there truly has been a growing sense of we need to make sure that everyone is on the same page and that there is no tolerance whatsoever for anyone who would do any harm to any of the scouts in our program. And these changes just reinforce and continue to help not only for all of us who have been with the program for a while, but as new families join, that it's obvious and it's very clear and everyone is on the same page from the very beginning. So this has been a great conversation. Let's wrap up though with maybe a bigger picture thought or two. Um, and you touched a little bit on some of the aims and methods of scouting, and a major emphasis of scouting, especially the training component. It's to
Mhm.
help our participants, whether it's a youth or an adult, discover new information, master a new skill, and make them more effective and productive in their leadership role, leadership being such a key part of what we do. Um, in your leadership role as training committee chair, what would you say would be your biggest hope about this youth protection change, and changes multiple, and how do you think it will affect our leaders and our program?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I could go on for days with this one. Um, I think if I'm just talking about my biggest hope right now is that we always talk about Ben Powell and his expectations um, that the best teacher is leading by example. And my biggest hope is that all of our registered adults and even youth at some point will willingly stay ahead of their youth protection training and their expiration date so that we can be able at any point in time to proudly open up our data, our dashboard, and say we are 100% trained and compliant when it comes to youth protection training. What we found in conversations and looking at the incidents reports, and this is across the nation, is that the data from Scouting America has shown that when our registered adults are current in their youth protection training, as well as trained in their position specific training, scouts are thriving in their units. The units sustain themselves. Um, the scouts are leading. We have adults interactions as far as following the aims and methods of scouting, and it's a very healthy unit. And so I cannot encourage people more to go out and look at, again, stay compliant and up to date with YPT. Don't ever let it expire, but making sure that you're covered in your unit specific training or your leadership position specific training. And then there's so much more. There's so many other fun things coming up. We have Wood Badge for adults, NYLT for youth, which is all about developing even more leadership. And then other opportunities throughout the years to get things. And I think one of my favorites is Scouting University coming up. And it's really exciting when you're like-minded and live and breathe um the Scout Oath and Law, and come back again to making sure we're providing programs that are completely and totally 100% safe for our youth. And so, I can just wrap it up as just saying, as volunteers, we don't do this for the money. We do this and we're investing in the future of our youth, and we want what's best for the youth in our programs. And to do that, we each have to do our own part.
Fair enough. Well, if you would like to learn more information or maybe recap some of these youth protection training discussions that we have had here today, you certainly can visit our website at bsacac.org. And if you search for youth safety, you'll find the page on our site that has a number of different links, both to national resources, some of which Christy has described in this conversation, or a direct link to go ahead and take that youth protection training and make sure that you don't let it expire. Again, that's bsacac.org, and then search in the search tab for youth safety. Christy Cochran, our training committee chair, we appreciate your time in joining us here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.